Shane Murphy here, entrepreneur and restaurant marketing expert. Welcome to the Restaurant Rocket Fuel podcast, where we discuss marketing strategies that leading restaurateurs are using to grow and expand their restaurants. This podcast is sponsored by Boostly, the text marketing company that works with every point of sale and online ordering vendor in the industry. No contracts, no monthly fees. Learn more at boostly.com. Welcome back, everybody. Today we are joined by Matt Doka, the co-founder and CTO of 5 Stars, which is a loyalty program which has had over 30 million people get rewarded at over 12,000 local businesses, and they've driven over $2 billion in transactions throughout their network. Also, the word on the street is that Matt grills a killer steak, and Matt has been super helpful through the years for people like me who are in the industry and always trying to level up our game. So I've appreciated Matt and all that he's done for not only me, but the industry as a whole. Matt, thank you so much for joining and sharing your knowledge and experiences with the audience here.
Thanks, Shane. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. Well, maybe before we just dive in, can you tell us more about your background as well as the story of 5 Stars and how it all got started?
Sure. So I grew up in a border town. I was born in El Paso, Texas, and both of my parents were doctors and did a lot of work with their careers doing volunteer work and mission work south of the border. And as a kid growing up, we were brought along for the journey, me and my brother. And as much as I loved seeing and kind of growing up and taking in that example of how to use your careers to have an impact on people, I hated biology. Too much memorization, not enough math. Don't tell my parents that, but I decided instead I was going to study engineering, no medicine for me, did engineering and finance at Penn. And the first part of my work journey was trying to find a career I liked and where I could do what my parents were doing. So my first job was at a hedge fund. It was very intellectually interesting and zero missional impact of any kind. Maybe we made some foundations more money that maybe they gave to good causes, but not this sort of tangible thing that I saw my parents really model for me and my brother when we were kids. Sure. I tried. So the next thing I tried was investment banking. That was also not exactly the most impactful thing. And I met a friend who, after my summer in banking, I had a friend who was at McKinsey. Actually, 2 friends, Steve Leisner and Jesse Puggi. And Jesse's actually gone on to be an entrepreneur as well and kind of paved the way in a lot of ways for me. And they both were at McKinsey and said, hey, look, there's this program here. If you do it, you do your 2 years in consulting, you can go volunteer with your consulting skills in a developing country. And I said, well, that sounds really great. Sure, let's try for McKinsey, like only the number 1 consulting firm. But I rolled up my sleeves and tried really hard and got in. And so when I graduated, I went to McKinsey's New York office, did my 2 years there, and met my co-founder, or a guy who eventually became my co-founder for 5 Stars, Victor Ho. We met there, decided we didn't want to make slides for a living, wanted to build something that was making an impact. He had a similar vision for having an impact with his career. We wanted to do something around communities. And we were probably more on the business finance side than the really cool social network side. So we decided to focus on small business and those commerce communities and not like the Facebook communities that are maybe a little cooler than we were. And that was really the vision behind 5 Stars, was building technology that would help connect people and businesses more closely together. In the U.S., businesses, and particularly small businesses, are the lifeblood of the American economy and of American communities. And 100 years ago even, they were also the lifeblood of social life. You had credit, you had relationships. It was the place of a city or a town, was the general store or the restaurant or whatever. That's changed a lot. It's still the lifeblood of our economy, but not so much the social lifeblood. And so we wanted to build 5 Stars around software that would bring both of those elements together, helping businesses to thrive, but also the communities around them to thrive and to turn transactions into relationships. We got into Y Combinator, which was an amazing journey, really early on. And it was really right before that time, actually, I did get the chance to go volunteer in a developing country. I went to Uganda for 5 months, which was an incredible experience, which I'm grateful to this day that McKinsey provided me. But landed, I think our interview with Y Combinator was like a week after I landed. It's a bit of culture shock I was dealing with, but we hit the ground running. And 13 years later, here we are still powering CRM, CDP, customer identity and loyalty in small businesses around not just the US now, but also UK, Honduras we're launching next month, and Canada we're in already, and Puerto Rico's not really a different country, but there's a lot of regulations that are different there, and we're live there as well. So it's been a great journey. It took a lot longer to achieve some of these milestones than we thought when we were young, naive, and optimistic. But it's been a good one, and happy to share whatever I can from it today.
That's amazing. I love that. And it always does tend to take longer than we start out thinking. And
Oh yeah,
thank goodness, because if we knew how long it would take up front, we might not have started in the beginning. But that's awesome. I love hearing that background and story and how you guys got into that. Maybe I'm curious, were there any like specific problems or issues that you were observing with these small businesses that led to like down the loyalty path in creating these? How do we connect consumers and businesses and turn those transactions into relationships?
it's a good question. I think our anecdote from living in New York for 2 years was that even though we frequented places constantly, like the neighborhood coffee shop, the neighborhood restaurant, we were not only were we a nameless face, but when we didn't show up or when we finally moved, no one had any idea. And all of the small business owners we talked to know some regulars, have a sense that regulars are an important part of their business, but regular or not, they have no way to reach somebody out of the store. They don't know how often that person's coming in, and they can't communicate with their most important clients or even any of their clients really effectively, for that matter, maybe with the exception of some posts on Facebook, maybe an Instagram here and there. But when you think about your close friends that you communicate with, you're communicating over text. Sometimes you're using WhatsApp, like mobile push. You're rarely sending email, and you're especially not hoping your friends just maybe some acquaintances see a post, but you're using that just to make people jealous, Yeah. You're not actually making things happen through those communications. And so we wanted to bring the ability to know and talk to your customers and engage with them, not just when they're in the store, but especially when they're out of it or when they have gotten out of the habit of coming back, to every small business in America. And the most powerful examples of this already were emerging at that time. You had Sephora had an incredible loyalty program they built. Unfortunately, it was on email, and that was not actually, it turned out to be a little culturally insensitive. And we studied this when we were at McKinsey. It's like very hard for some cultures to understand the email addresses of other cultures because names are complicated. We live in a wonderfully, pluralistic society, but that's tricky. So what's easier than an email and a name is phone number. Everybody's got a phone number. And so that was really the key behind what we did. And we drew a lot of inspiration from Sephora, drew a lot of inspiration from another client of ours, Starbucks. And we wanted to take that technology and make it available for the little guys so they could build these big databases and not just have this list and boring analytics, but actually bring people back in more frequently and recover lost customers. People who've just gotten out of the habit of going in or maybe had some issue they need to talk about. Whatever it is, we start that conversation going for them automatically without any work and get those folks coming back in.
Yeah, so you touched on this lightly, and I'd love to explore a little deeper, but like at its root, why is it so important that these restaurants have a loyalty program, and what sort of impact does that have on them from a revenue standpoint? Like, it's easy to know, hey, I need to have this relationship with my customers.
Sure.
But in a small business, you're often trying to survive. You're trying to get through to the next week and the next month, and sometimes it's hard to pause and really realize, hey, what is the business impact of investing in this type of experience?
So one thing I think is really important to note, there's a lot of, and for all the restaurant owners listening out there are a lot of loyalty programs out there. Bar none, they're mediocre. And for the first 6 months of our life as a company, 12 months really, let's be honest, we only offered just a loyalty program where we're tracking numbers, giving people points. We always had the vision of turning it into a life cycle communication platform where a piece of that is the loyalty program. But the real value comes from all the connecting and communicating you can do and that we do automatically with your customers on top of the data. Because if you're just collecting loyalty data and giving people points, they do come in maybe 10% more often. We've looked at the numbers. It's a little hard to prove statistically, but we see 5 to 10 times the ROI of that from the communication that we're able to automate. And that's where the real value comes in, not just for the merchant who wants to build a thriving business, but for customers who, are making decisions every day about where to shop, where to purchase. They want value. They want to feel a part of somewhere. They want familiarity. It's a great win-win. And that's where the value really comes from, is the lifecycle marketing, not the loyalty.
I think that's an important one. A lot of restaurant operators don't realize the difference between having a loyalty program and having like a marketing program, whether that's through SMS or like 5 Stars does a lot of like push notifications in addition to SMS as well. And that distinction is crucial. Maybe can you touch on that? Why is it such a wide difference between I'm tracking points and people might be coming because I have some points or rewards on the horizon versus that marketing side that comes from that life cycle communication?
I think there's 2 major differences. One is the way you think about the communication. So loyalties, we all are familiar with loyalty. Many of us, myself included, love, hey, buy 10, get 1 free. But
yeah.
The thinking is all on the customer to track, remember, take action on. Maybe you get a reminder here and there, but it's a very proactive type of engagement with a merchant where it's still on you to remember and do an act. While we don't take that away, right? Obviously, a key, one of the components of the lifecycle marketing system we provide is loyalty. On top of that, we add pull marketing, where instead of the customer taking initiative, we're also using all the data that we learn about the customer, their preferences, and how often they're coming and or not coming, to also proactively pull them in, to reach out to them and bring them back. And you get a lot more when you're doing both than when you're just doing one. When you're just doing push, great. Or when you're relying on the person to have the initiative, just reaches a lot less people. And if that person's not aware or part of that already, then it's creepy when you just get reached out randomly. I mean, we all get the text like, hey, are you looking for a job from some random recruiter? Or
Totally.
There's a lot of strange random texts people get these days too that I think resonate as also you can't just do that. So I think the whole, I think putting both together in an experience for the consumer creates a much better, more normal relationship between them and the merchant.
I love that. And you've obviously been largely on like the product side for the entire life cycle of 5 Stars. Which I imagine you've kind of been talking about how the product has shifted and that vision has come into this full life cycle communication platform instead of just being just a like point tracking loyalty provider. Have there been, I guess, how have you gone about like testing the consumer's response as you've layered in different types of communication and tried different strategies in the communication? I've interfaced with 5 Star as a consumer several times with several different businesses in my local community. So I've seen everything from the buy one get ones to like the 10% off, or the flash sales of, hey, I'm a bakery and we're going to be closing in 2 hours, so here's a flash sale. I imagine there have been a lot of tests to identify what works and what works best so you can apply that across your network. Can you maybe share some of how you went about that and some of the learnings that came through that type of testing?
Absolutely. So I'll state some of the obvious obvious stuff first. So anyone who's done marketing or anyone who sits down and thinks about this probably won't surprise you. So I give that disclaimer. Nothing. I'm not going to take too much credit for this brilliance, but one obvious thing. We have two kinds of messages, right? You have your flash promotion sales, things that a merchant wants to communicate to a segment or an entire customer base. And then we have a second, the automated messaging category that's based on where a customer is in their specific life cycle journey. The more personalized one has a much higher return rate. Typically is only going out one person, to that specific person. So the most volume in our network comes from the push messages, but the most conversions come from the automation. So we recommend doing both, and we try to provide content and guidance to merchants both through our account management team as well as through our own internal user marketing. Here's these key events coming up: Father's Day, Mother's Day, Easter, Christmas, whatever it is, to help folks think about how do I do push promotion as effectively as possible, in addition to all this lifecycle stuff we have running. I think the second probably very obvious thing is it does depend on what vertical you're in. The things that you would say and message and offer and engage with customers at an oil change, and we've got a lot of oil change places, is different than at a boba shop, different than at a coffee shop or a sit-down restaurant or a dog groomer. And so it is vertical dependent. At this point, 5 Stars has seen hundreds of businesses and thousands of promotions and automations in every vertical. So we're generally able to be a smart, helpful advisor as a merchant, as we sort of co-develop or think through that program with the merchant. And when they want to tailor it, to hop on the phone with us and think about what adjustments to make. But it should be obvious that's different. What's a little less obvious? All of us in the business world probably receive hundreds of emails, both on our personal Gmails and our business Gmails. Occasionally we receive texts. Half the time it's from sketchy foreign texters. These days, the other half of the time, it's a really nauseating experience from some obviously kind of commercial spam. And I think, so what will surprise listeners is that our text and mobile push is 4 to 5 times more effective than email. And this was surprising to me, right? I got tons of email my whole life trying to get me to do something, and rarely did I receive effective texts. But we've done so much work both on the customer experience, and in the US, you have to do a lot of work on the compliance side. So we handle all the compliance for our merchants as well. But that actually we see 4 to 5 times higher conversion rates from our text and push than we do from email. And so, very much recommend working with an omni-channel provider like us when you're doing lifecycle communications, not just a Marketo that really focuses on email, or a Braze that only focuses on text. So, omni-channel helps because customers at the end of the day do still want to be able to pick between the three, and you've got some flexibility to test and experiment. And make sure you work with a compliant one, because we've seen a lot of lawsuits in the US about folks who are not compliant with or working with providers who are not compliant with text regulations. And that can be pretty expensive, like hundreds of thousands of dollars expensive for non-compliance.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. Now, these are a lot of great, really actionable things that we've discussed. Like, we've talked about the difference between just having a loyalty program itself and a life cycle marketing communication, how that shifts when you add in text and mobile push in addition to email, and the flash messages versus the automated individualized messaging based on someone's behavior. These are a lot of tools that will allow people to just stack and stack and stack higher conversion rates down the funnel, which is so awesome. One thing that
I do want to let me just pause you there, because there's a lot of operators and also folks who are helping restaurant operators, whether you're in payments or food supply, what have you, helping this industry. And I want to be really specific on what you should expect from a vendor like us, like a platform like us. So if you're in automotive, with one of the key metrics of success is in that first month, how many people are signed up. A good platform in automotive, at least 500. In restaurant, 1,000, or fast casual, 1,000. retail 1 to 2,000, and you should see numbers like that for at least the first 2 to 3 months, building a massive base. Our best quick service restaurants have 20 to 30,000 people in their databases and are still slowly growing that as their communities grow. You should see at least a 10%, not just open rates, like you'll hear email providers try to pitch you on how great their open rates are and their open rate tracking. We see 10%, we see 8 to 15% visit rates from our automation. That's not like, so when you think about when somebody's talking about an open rate, that 30%, 70% don't even open the email. And out of the 30% that do they even come to the store? So you want to see those kinds of results before you pay somebody 100, 200, 300, 400 a month to run a platform like this for you, or else you're not getting the ROI that you deserve.
That's, I think, one of the crucial things where a lot of restaurant operators have tried so many different things through the years, and they all cost in that like $100 to $500 range each. And most of them are very time intensive to launch and to start. And the operator, isn't a marketing expert, so they don't know how to launch it themselves. And eventually it fizzles out after a few months. But I think that's crucial. One of the first things you can look for is, how is my database growing? And but it's not just how big is the database, it's what happens after that. Are they actually coming in and transacting? What I love about 5 Star's mission is it's about turning transactions into relationships, and you don't get the relationship if people aren't coming and interacting with the brand. It's not enough to just have someone's phone number sitting in a database. You have to do something with that. You have to connect with that customer and cause them to come in. And that's what I love about what you just highlighted is it's not just open rates. It's not just a database. It's about visit rates and growth. That's awesome. Now, we've obviously talked about a lot of different things. If you were speaking to a small restaurant owner who is maybe even just starting their brand, or they're getting ready to grow their business after having not done marketing for a long time, do you have any closing advice for that type of operator before we wrap up today?
I think that choose your partners well. Your payment partner, your marketing partners, they're going to give you the ideas that make sense for your industry and your community, in addition to the ones you're hopefully bringing to the table as a creative, ambitious entrepreneur, and make sure to leverage them. A lot of times, partners, ourselves included, aren't going to have that additional insight, might have a lot of additional insights to offer, but just aren't going to have the opportunity or think to bring it up unless we're asked. But when we all got into this business to help small businesses, and we're always excited to do what we can, to help you grow your business. So ask the questions, make us add more value. Think of how you're going to get more value out of this conversation, not just directly, but like what point. People ask us all the time, what point of sales are good, what credit card processing is good. And, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things I could be doing with my career. I've chosen to stick here because I want to make an impact. I love making an impact on small businesses and communities. And as y'all probably know, we got acquired by SumUp recently. And we just really align on our vision for the world, which is a world where everyone can build a thriving business. And we want to empower those small businesses all over the world. And so when you're talking to us, when you're talking to other great providers, make sure to bring that up. And for all the partners out there, never hesitate to reach out. 5 Stars and SumUp partner with lots of payment processors. We've built great payment and marketing gateways on top of this technology. We have great relationships with folks like Payrock, Fiserv, FIS, and we're always looking to build more relationships. And for all the fellow founders out there, I'm still doing angel investing and probably give much more advice than I write checks, because that's kind of always been my thing, as Shane was saying at the beginning. But love to hear what you're working on in the space or in adjacent spaces, and keep making life better for small businesses around the world.
Awesome. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining us today. Where can our listeners go to find more about you or 5 Stars?
Sure. So 5stars.com is still up. That'll take you really to the core of our marketing and customer engagement platform. You can reach out to me directly on LinkedIn. Always happy to have a conversation, or shoot me an email at matt.doka@sumup.com, and we can, or gmail.com, and take a discussion from there.
Thanks again, Matt. Thanks for sharing all these experiences. This was awesome.
Sounds good. Thanks, Shane.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Restaurant Rocket Fuel. And thank you to the amazing restaurateurs that work so hard to provide an amazing guest experience for our communities. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Boostly. To see how we can drive more revenue to your business, visit boostly.com. Don't forget to subscribe and go out there and maximize the potential that you and your business have in front of you.